This is the Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm reviewing and commenting on some of the talks recorded in the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. And today we'll be reviewing excerpts from talk number 20. And let me get it up. The At first, the questioner, who is Mr. Evan Wentz, asks, is solitude necessary for a yani? And Ramana responds, solitude is in the mind of man. One might think, one might be in the thick of the world and maintain serenity of the mind. Such a one is in solitude. Another may stay in a forest, but still be unable to control his mind. He cannot be said to be in solitude. Solitude is a function of the mind. A man attached to desire cannot get solitude wherever he may be. A detached man is always in solitude. The questioner asks, so then one might be engaged in work and be free from desire and keep up solitude? Is it so? And Maharshi says, yes, work performed with attachment is a shackle, whereas work performed with detachment does not affect the doer. He is, even while working, in solitude. The questioner goes on to ask, some say that Sri Shankaracharya was only intellectual and not realized. Is this so? Maharshi, why worry about Shankaracharya? Realize your own self. Others can take care of themselves. Then the question continued, and Ramana answered a question about power, cities, and his answer ended with, which is the real power? Is it to increase prosperity or bring about peace? That which results in peace is the highest perfection, the highest city. The questioner says, but common people in Europe and America would not appreciate such an attitude and would desire a display of power and instruction by lectures, etc. Maharshi responds, lectures may entertain individuals for a few hours without improving them. Silence, on the other hand, is permanent and benefits the whole of humanity. The dialogue continues, but silence is not understood. Maharshi says, it does not matter. By silence, eloquence is meant. Oral lectures are not so eloquent as silence. Silence is unceasing eloquence. The primal master, Dakshinamurti, is the ideal. He taught his Rishi disciples by silence. The questioner responds, but then there were disciples for him. It was all right. Now it is different. They must be sought after and helped. Solitude and silence. Ramana talks about both of these, and there's a deep similarity. The deepest solitude and the greatest silence both come from within. This is when the mind is no longer reaching out for happiness and satisfaction. You know reality. You know deep within yourself what is real, what is true. You are this reality. For most of us, our minds get in the way of this reality with its imaginations and the projection of a mental reality based on an assumed individual with a world for the individual to participate in. Silence is when you are not reaching out into this seeming world with its activities and entanglements. Instead, you are resting, content within yourself. Then reality becomes apparent. It just floats up. Ramana says that silence is when no I arises. Then you're resting in the self. Ramana said his main teaching was in silence. Words were just for those who didn't get it from the silence. Silence lets the truth rise up from within you. Those sitting with Ramana had their minds quieted so much that their truth came to them naturally from within. Thus it was with Dakshinamurti too. Silence is about being able to listen to your own truth. Silence is internal. It's not a matter of external factors. In this solitude is where you practice within yourself, by yourself, even if there are others who surround you. Silence and solitude are intimately related. In solitude, there is silence. In silence, there is solitude. Like solitude, silence is internal, not a matter of external factors. In the midst of noise, there is silence, inner silence. This inner silence is the space, so to speak, in which all the noise erupts. You can focus your attention on this silence, and then everything is quieter. You are quieter. You are the silence. The thing about sound, about noise, is that the ears have a direct connection to the brain. You can't shut them off. And sound brings emotional responses and gets you stirred up. The sound of a tiger nearby will bring fear and arousal. The sound of a friend singing brings an entirely different emotional response. And all these seemed wired into the system. The reaction seems automatic. But if you notice this and feel it while it's happening, you can choose not to react, not to respond. Then the wired-in response doesn't come. You can be the impartial witness, which is actually who you are anyway. This ends the reaction, since it was somebody reacting to something. And as the witness, you're not that somebody anymore. So there's no need to react. The greatest trouble, though, is from the noise in your mind. Silence is when this internal noise stops. This is the purpose of meditation, the purpose of self-inquiry. To make this noise stop, you have to be satisfied, at ease, content with what you have, where you are, and who you are. When you truly see no difference, that there are no others, there is nothing separate or outside myself to need, to want, to gain or lose, then this satisfaction is natural. So, who am I? And what is there to gain or lose? Are these different questions? Now, the man asked, was Shankara realized? This question about Shankara and realization reminds me of an old Zen story. How grass and trees become enlightened. When Shinkan received visitors, which was infrequently, he seldom answered their questions. One day, a 50-year-old student of enlightenment said to Shinkan, I have studied the Tendai school of thought since I was a little boy, but one thing in it I cannot understand. Tendai claims that even the grass and trees will become enlightened. To me, this seems very strange. Of what use is it to discuss how grass and trees become enlightened, asked Shinken? The question is how you yourself can become so. Did you ever consider that? I never thought of it in that way, marveled the old man. Then go home and think it over, finished Shinken. Like the trees and grass is Shankara's realization. The question is not about him, but about you and what you need for your own realization. Ramana tells us to inquire and keep at it until we realize our real identity, the one that does not change or come and go. Be intensely curious. Just who am I really? Keep the investigation going. You exist always, so you can inquire always. And now we will listen to my teacher, Nome, with a discourse, The Silence of Sri Ramana.
The supreme knowledge of being is indicated by Sri Bhagavan's silence, just as it was with Dakshinamurti. It is mind-transcendent knowledge, the knowledge of your own self, which is Brahman. In order to realize this knowledge, the most important thing is to make your vision non-objective and actually inquire into what your identity is, what the true nature of your existence is. The knowledge itself is identical with being. It is not knowledge of being as the knowledge of an object, for what is objective is not real. It is non-objective knowledge in which the knowledge and being are one and the same thing. The knowledge of your existence is not an objectified one. That you exist is simple and true. That you know that you exist is equally so, and cannot be separated from the existence itself. This does not depend on thought, nor does it depend on the senses. Indeed, whatever is sensed and whatever is conceived is not your identity. The Maharshi advises us to make the inquiry, who am I? How can I be something objective? All things objective are created and destroyed. How can that which is truly I have birth or death? How could it be defined by a body or the attributes of a body? This is not a knowledge that can be studied as if it were a topic apart from you. This is knowledge which is absolute, of the absolute. Brahman knowing Brahman, which is alone capable of doing so. This is self-knowledge. What can you think that is yourself? And if you cannot think of yourself, how much less could it be placed into words? You can know for certain that it is not something bodily, nothing of the senses or prana, nothing mental, and most essentially, it is not individualized. Every limitation or bondage and its consequent suffering depends on an individual, such as an illusion dependent on the assumed individual. What is it that constitutes the individual existence? A thought of something does not necessarily make it so. The thought of I does not make for an I, that is an ego. If your existence seems to be as if individualized, inquire into the very heart of this individual and see what actually exists. If you so inquire, the individuality being but a false assumption, being unreal, will vanish. The real will remain. In truth, the reality always is, and the unreal never is. So in this sense, both the real and the unreal are unborn. The reality of the self is beginningless, it is ever existent, and so it is unborn, and thus indestructible. Not beginning or ending, unlike the body, the mind, and so forth. The unreal is also unborn. It has not actually come into existence. If you inquire and find that the ego I is unreal, then everything based upon that ego I is equally unreal. For that which is the product of an illusion is as imagined as the original illusion itself. The reality ever is. It is the self of the nature of being, consciousness, bliss. The unreal, from the I down to the forms of the world, has never come to be. It is always unreal. The unreal does not become real at any time. Likewise, the real never becomes unreal at any time. The conclusion about such is easily reached by those who inquire to know their own being. In the knowledge, the silent knowledge of your own self, which is the one self that alone exists for all eternity, there being no multiplicity of selves whatsoever. In this knowledge, being is. What trace could there be of the unreal? In this knowledge, consciousness is. How could there be the form of the mind? In this knowledge is ananda, bliss. Where would the cause of suffering be? This much has been said. Nothing has been added to the silence. Yet in light of this silent truth, nothing has been subtracted. It is simply as it is. That is all that you are. Inquire within yourself and perceive this for yourself.
We will take a few minutes and inquire for ourselves. Notice that you exist and you know that you exist. And investigate within yourself. Inquire. Between two breaths, who am I? between two thoughts. Who am I? When there are no thoughts, who am I? When it's silent, who am I? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? Am I this body, this mind, this intellect, this ego? If I'm not any of those, who am I? All right. And so close with a short chant. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. All right.